My dad skipped my graduation for his stepdaughter, but I didn't skip his retirement chapter. 1. The Forgotten Miles. Asheville, North Carolina, May 2023. The late spring air in Asheville carried the sweet scent of mountain laurel as Ethan Reed adjusted his graduation cap in front of the mirror. His green eyes, inherited from his mother, stared back at him with a mix of pride and apprehension. At 24, he had finally completed his psychology degree, working his way through college while holding down 2 part-time jobs. His dark brown hair was freshly cut for the occasion. And despite the heat, he wore a crisp white shirt beneath his graduation gown. "Hey, do you think this tie is too much?" Ethan called out to his roommate, Marcus, who was sprawled on their worn couch, scrolling through his phone. Marcus looked up, squinting slightly. "Nah, man, it's your day, go all out." He set his phone down and stood, walking over to Ethan. "You hear from your dad yet?" Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He texted last night, said he was looking forward to it. What Ethan didn't mention was how the text had come at 11:43 p.m., clearly an afterthought. He also didn't mention how his father had ended the message with "Chloe sends her love to," even though his stepsister hadn't bothered to contact him directly in months. The apartment they shared was small but tidy, located in the more affordable west side of Asheville. Through the window, the Blue Ridge Mountains created a stunning backdrop against the city skyline. Ethan had chosen Asheville State University partly because of its psychology program, but mostly because it was far enough from his father's home in Charlotte to avoid regular visits, yet close enough that Gregory couldn't use distance as an excuse to miss important events, like today. "Your mum's still coming, right?" Marcus asked, adjusting Ethan's tie slightly. "Yeah, she'll be there. Probably already found the best seat in the house." Ethan smiled, thinking of his mother, Diane. After the divorce 12 years ago, she had moved to Asheville to start fresh, taking Ethan with her. While Gregory had built his new perfect family with his second wife, Victoria, and her daughter Chloe, Diane had rebuilt her life piece by piece, working long hours as a nurse to provide for Ethan. "Cool, and what about Michelle, she coming?" Ethan checked his watch. "She's meeting us there. Her shift at the hospital ends at noon." Michelle Chen, Ethan's girlfriend of 2 years, was completing her residency at Asheville Memorial. They had met when Ethan was doing his clinical psychology internship at the same hospital. Her steady presence had become his anchor, especially during the stressful final year of his degree. A car horn honked outside. "That's our ride," Marcus said, grabbing his keys. "You ready to do this thing?" Ethan took one last look in the mirror. "As ready as I'll ever be." The university auditorium buzzed with excitement as families filed in, clutching programs and flowers. Ethan stood in line with the other psychology graduates, scanning the crowd for familiar faces. He spotted his mother Isali, her auburn hair catching the light as she waved enthusiastically from the third row. Beside her sat Michelle, beautiful in a floral dress, her dark hair pulled back into an elegant knot. They had saved a seat between them, presumably for Gregory. Ethan checked his phone again. No messages. "You okay?" asked Lily, a classmate standing next to him in line. "Yeah, just looking for my dad," Ethan replied, pocketing his phone. "The ceremony's about to start. I'm sure he's just running late," Lily offered with a reassuring smile. Ethan nodded. But a familiar knot was forming in his stomach, the same feeling he'd had at his high school graduation when Gregory had arrived, just as Ethan was walking off the stage, having missed his name being called. The same feeling he'd had at countless baseball games and school plays growing up, where Gregory's seat remained empty while Chloe's dance recitals and cheerleading competitions were apparently unmissable. The ceremony began with speeches from the university president and the dean. As the psychology department chair took the podium, Ethan's phone vibrated. He discreetly checked it. Heart pounding. Gregory Reed. "Sorry son. Emergency with Chloe's college interview preparation. Her Cornell alumni meeting got moved up. Can't make it today. Take pictures. Proud of you." The words blurred as Ethan stared at the screen. Cornell alumni meeting. Chloe was still a junior in high school. Her college interviews weren't even scheduled until fall, and even if they were, they wouldn't be happening on a Saturday in May. "Reed, Ethan James," the department chair called. Ethan pocketed his phone, plastered on a smile, and walked across the stage. As he accepted his diploma, he heard his mother and Michelle cheering loudly. His eyes scanned the empty seat between them one last time before he moved on. "I can't believe he did this to you again," Diane said later, at the small celebration dinner at Ethan's favorite local restaurant, the Mountain Goat. Her voice was tight with controlled anger. "Mum, it's fine," Ethan said, though everyone at the table knew it wasn't. "No, it's not fine," Michelle interjected, her dark eyes flashing. "This was your graduation, Ethan. You worked so hard for this." Marcus, who had joined them, along with his girlfriend Zoe, shook his head. "Man, I don't get it. What could be more important than your kid's college graduation?" "Chloe, apparently," Ethan said, attempting humor but failing to keep the bitterness from his voice. "She had some Cornell alumni thing in May when she's still a junior." Diane raised an eyebrow skeptically. "That doesn't even make sense," Ethan shrugged, taking a long sip of his beer. "That's the excuse this time." Michelle placed her hand over his. "I'm sorry, Ethan. You deserved to have him here." The restaurant around them was warm and inviting, with exposed wood beams and local art on the walls. Through the large windows, they could see the sun beginning to set over the mountains, painting the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks. It should have been a perfect moment, the culmination of years of hard work, surrounded by people who truly cared about him. Instead, Ethan couldn't shake the hollow feeling in his chest. "Hey," Diane said suddenly, raising her glass. "I want to make a toast. To my son, who graduated with honors today, who worked 2 jobs while maintaining a 3.8 GPA, who has already been accepted into one of the most competitive master's programs in clinical psychology in the state." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Ethan, I couldn't be prouder of the man you've become." To Ethan, everyone echoed, raising their glasses. As they clinked glasses, Ethan's phone buzzed again. A text from his stepsister, Chloe. "Chloe, heard you graduated today. Congrats, I guess. Dad says you're mad he couldn't come. Don't be such a baby about it. He's busy with important stuff. Not everyone gets a second chance at college like you did." Ethan stared at the message, feeling the familiar mixture of hurt and rage that Chloe's texts often provoked. The second chance comment was a reference to Ethan taking a gap year after high school to work and save money for college. Something Chloe, with her fully funded education courtesy of Gregory, would never need to understand. "Everything okay?" Michelle asked, noticing his expression. Ethan turned off his phone and slipped it into his pocket. "Yeah," he said, forcing a smile. "Everything's fine." But, as he looked around the table, at the people who had actually shown up for him, his mother who had sacrificed everything, his girlfriend who understood him, his friends who supported him, a thought began to form in Ethan's mind. A thought about the difference between the family you're born into and the family you choose. A thought about what it might mean to finally stand up and demand the respect he deserved. A thought about what might happen at Gregory Reed's retirement party. 6 months from now, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, you're not alone. This story is for everyone who's ever been overlooked, forgotten, or pushed aside. Subscribe to our channel to follow Ethan's journey as he confronts the father who always put him second. In Chapter 2, we'll see what happens when old wounds are reopened and long-kept secrets begin to surface. Don't miss a single moment of this emotional family drama that will have you asking, how far would you go to finally be seen? Chapter 2. Beneath the Passageville, North Carolina, October 2023. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of woodsmoke and fallen leaves as Ethan Reed pulled into the parking lot of Riverstone Coffee, a small cafe nestled along the French Broad River. Through the large windows, he could already see his mother waiting, a steaming mug cradled in her hands as she gazed out at the water. At 49, Diane Reed still possessed the same quiet strength that had carried them through The difficult years after the divorce. Her auburn hair now had strands of silver that caught the morning light, and fine lines had formed around her eyes, evidence of both laughter and tears over the years. Ethan grabbed the thick manila envelope from his passenger seat before heading inside. The bell above the door jingled softly as he entered, and Diane looked up, her face brightening. "There's my boy," she said, standing to embrace him. "You look tired, honey." "Last night's session ran late," Ethan explained, sliding into the chair. Across from her, as part of his master's program, he was counseling at-risk teens at a community center downtown. "One of my kids is going through a rough time with his dad." Diane's eyes softened with understanding. "And that hits close to home, doesn't it?" Before Ethan could respond, a barista approached their table. "The usual, Ethan?" "Thanks, Mariah," he nodded, grateful for the small comforts of living in a place where people knew your order by heart. When Mariah had gone, Diane gestured to the envelope he'd placed on the table. "Is that what I think it is?" Ethan nodded, pushing it toward her. "Dad's retirement party invitation came yesterday, plus the itinerary for the whole weekend of festivities." His tone was carefully neutral. But Diane had always been able to read between his lines. She pulled out the contents: an elegant, cream-colored invitation with gold embossing, and several pages detailing the events planned for what was being called the Gregory Reed Legacy Celebration. "My God," Diane murmured, scanning the documents. "A welcome dinner at the Biltmore Estate on Friday. The main retirement gala at the Grand Bohemian Hotel on Saturday. A farewell brunch on Sunday." She looked up at Ethan. "This is ... excessive," Ethan supplied, pretentious. "A complete waste of money." "I was going to say very Gregory," Diane replied with a small, knowing smile. Mariah returned with Ethan's cappuccino, placing it carefully on the table before retreating. "Are you going?" Diane asked, once they were alone again. Ethan wrapped his hands around the warm mug. Outside, the river flowed steadily past, carrying golden leaves downstream. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "Part of me wants to skip it entirely, give him a taste of his own medicine. But the other part," Ethan's green eyes met his mother's identical ones. "The other part wants to go and finally say all the things I've been holding back for years." Diane reached across the table and placed her hand over his. Her touch was warm and familiar, a comfort since childhood. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you. You know that." "I know." Ethan hesitated, then asked the question that had been weighing on him. "Did you get an invitation to?" Diane laughed, a short, sharp sound. "To my ex-husband's retirement party? God, no. Victoria would sooner invite a rattlesnake into her home." She shook her head. "Besides, what would I even do there? Sit in a corner while Gregory pretends our 15 years of marriage never happened. I just thought, ... Since you were such a big part of building his career in the early days, that's ancient history, honey. As far as Gregory is concerned, his real life didn't start until Victoria and Chloe." There was no bitterness in her voice, just a resigned acceptance that had come with years of distance. Ethan took a sip of his cappuccino, letting the rich flavor ground him. "Sometimes I wonder if he remembers anything from before. Like, does he ever think about those camping trips we used to take? Or teaching me to ride a bike?" His voice grew quieter. "Or does all of that just ... not matter anymore?" Diane's expression softened. "Oh, Ethan, I don't know what goes on in your father's head these days, but I do know that just because someone chooses to forget something, it doesn't make it any less real." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the cafe around them humming with quiet conversation and the gentle clinking of cups on saucers. Through the windows, Ethan watched a pair of kayakers navigate the river, working in tandem against the current. "There's something else," he finally said, reaching into his messenger bag and pulling out an old, worn leather journal. "I found this when I was cleaning out my closet last week." Diane's eyes widened in recognition. "Is that ... Yeah, the journal you gave me when the divorce happened. You told me to write down my feelings since Dad wasn't around to talk to anymore." He opened the journal carefully. the pages yellow with age and filled with the messy handwriting of a 12-year-old boy. I wrote in this thing every day for almost 2 years, every missed visit, every cancelled plan, every time he chose Chloe over me. Ethan flipped through the pages, each one a record of childhood disappointment. And then I started writing letters to him that I never sent. Things I wanted to say, but couldn't. Diane swallowed hard. I had no idea you kept it all these years, neither did I, really? It got shoved into a box when we moved apartments. Ethan closed the journal and placed it on top of the retirement party invitation. Reading it again now, it's like all those feelings are still right there, just beneath the surface. What are you thinking of doing with it? Ethan stared at the journal, tracing its worn edges with his fingertip. I'm not sure yet, but there's something poetic about him celebrating his legacy when part of that legacy is. He gestured to the journal. Later that afternoon, Ethan sat in the small office he used for his graduate research at the university. The space was modest, but organized, with bookshelves lined with psychology texts and a small window that overlooked the campus quad. On his desk, next to his laptop, sat a framed photo of him and Michelle at a local music festival last summer, both smiling widely under the Asheville sky. A knock on his open door pulled him from his thoughts. Michelle stood in the doorway, still in her hospital scrubs, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Hey," she said, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. "Your text sounded urgent." Ethan stood and pulled her into a hug, breathing in the faint antiseptic smell that always clung to her after a hospital shift. Against his chest, she felt small but solider, constant in his increasingly turbulent thoughts. "How was your shift?" he asked as they separated. "Hectic. Triple trauma came in right as I was supposed to leave." She studied his face. "But that's not why you asked me to come here." "What's going on, Ethan?" He gestured for her to sit in the chair opposite his desk while he perched on the edge. "My dad's retirement party invitation came yesterday." Michelle's expression tightened slightly. Since Ethan's graduation, she had made no secret of her feelings about Gregory Reed and his treatment of Ethan, and I'm trying to decide whether to go. He handed her the invitation, watching as she scanned it. "Wow, 3 whole days of Gregory Reed appreciation," she remarked dryly. "Sounds exhausting." Despite himself, Ethan smiled. Michelle's directness was one of the things he loved most about her. "I had coffee with my mum this morning. We talked about it." "What did she say?" "That she'd support whatever I decided." He ran a hand through his hair. "The thing is, I don't want to just show up and play nice, you know. Not after everything, especially not after the graduation." Michelle leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. "Then don't. You don't owe him that. But I also don't want to just not show up. That feels like I'm letting him off the hook somehow." "So what's the alternative?" Ethan reached for the old journal that sat on his desk. "I found this recently. It's basically a record of every time my dad let me down when I was a kid." He passed it to Michelle, who opened it carefully, her expression softening as she scanned the childish handwriting. "Oh, Ethan," she murmured. "There's more," he said, opening his laptop and turning it toward her. On the screen was an email exchange between him and Gregory from 2 years ago. "This is when I asked him to help with tuition after my scholarship got reduced. He said he couldn't because he was saving for Chloe's college fund." Ethan clicked to another document. "And this is the tax return I found when I was helping him organize his home office last Christmas. He claimed a $50,000 deduction that same year for a donation to Chloe's private school's new athletic center." Michelle looked up from the screen, her expression a mix of shock and anger. "He lied to you. He's been lying to me for years," Ethan said quietly, "making promises he never intended to keep. Treating me like an obligation, while Chloe gets everything she wants." "What are you saying, Ethan? What do you want to do with all this?" He closed the laptop slowly, deliberately. "I'm saying maybe it's time for some honesty at this retirement party. Maybe it's time everyone saw the real Gregory Reed." Michelle studied him for a long moment. "Are you talking about some kind of public confrontation?" I don't know, maybe. He stood and paced to the window, looking out at students crossing the quad in the autumn sunshine. Or maybe just a private one. But I can't just smile and applaud while everyone celebrates what a great man he is, knowing what I know. Have you thought about what this might do to your relationship with him? With Chloe and Victoria, Ethan turned back to face her. What relationship, Michelle? He skipped my college graduation for a fake interview prep session with Chloe. He hasn't called once since then to apologize, or even to see how I'm doing. His voice grew quieter. Sometimes I think the only reason he even acknowledges me at all is because it would look bad to his friends and colleagues if he didn't. Michelle stood and crossed to him, placing her hands on his shoulders. If you do this whatever, this I want you to be sure it's what you really want. Not just something you'll regret when the anger fades. That's just it, Ethan said, covering her hands with his own. This isn't about anger anymore. It's about finally being honest with him, with myself, with everyone. He took a deep breath. I've spent my whole life being the understanding one. The one who makes excuses for him. The one who pretends it doesn't hurt. I don't want to do that anymore. Michelle searched his face, then nodded slowly. Okay, if this is what you need to do, I'm with you. She hesitated. Do you want me to come with you? To the party? Ethan felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. You would do that? Of course I would. That's what partners do. They show up for each other. The pointed subtext was not lost on either of them. Ethan pulled her into a tight embrace. Thank you, he whispered against her hair. For understanding. For being here. When they separated, Michelle's expression had grown thoughtful. You know, if you're really going to do this, you might want to talk to someone else first. Who? Your stepmother, Victoria. Ethan blinked in surprise. Victoria? Why would I talk to her? Because she's been married to your dad for what, 12 years now? She might have insights you don't, and ... Michelle hesitated. And because whatever you're planning will affect her too. Ethan hadn't considered this. In his mind, Victoria had always been a somewhat distant figure, polite, but cool, never attempting to be a mother to him, but never openly hostile either. She had always seemed content to focus on Chloe while maintaining a cordial but arm's-length relationship with her husband's son. I don't even know how to reach out to her, Ethan admitted. We barely talk except at Christmas and the occasional family dinner. Maybe start with a text. Ask to meet for coffee. Ethan considered this, imagining Victoria's surprise at receiving such a request from him. What would she think? Would she tell his father immediately? Or would she be curious enough to agree? I'll think about it, he promised, as Michelle gathered her things to leave. Ethan's phone chimed with a text. He glanced down to see Chloe's name on the screen, and felt the familiar twist in his stomach. With some hesitation, he opened the message. Chloe, Dad's been asking if you're coming to the retirement thing. Are you? Because he's stressing about the seating chart, and needs to know, like yesterday, no greeting, no pleasantries. Just Chloe, cutting to the chase, as always. Michelle had noticed his expression change. What is it, Chloe? He said, showing her the text. Apparently, my father is too busy to ask me directly if I'm attending his retirement celebration. So he's sent his messenger. Michelle read the text, and frowned. Charming as ever. Ethan stared at the phone for a long moment, then began typing. Ethan. Tell Dad I'll be there. With my girlfriend. We wouldn't miss it for the world. He hit send before he could reconsider. Then looked up at Michelle with a mix of determination and apprehension. Well, he said with a wry smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, I guess we're going to a party. Chapter 3. Unexpected Alice. Charlotte, North Carolina, November 2023. The upscale cafe in Charlotte's Myers Park neighborhood was exactly the kind of place Victoria Reed would choose, elegant yet understated. With soft jazz playing in the background and an extensive tea menu. Ethan arrived 15 minutes early, selecting a table in the corner that offered some privacy while still allowing him to watch the door. He ordered a black coffee and tried to calm his racing thoughts. When Victoria entered, several heads turned, At 52 she remained striking, tall and slender, with expertly highlighted blonde hair and the kind of polished appearance that came from years of careful maintenance. She wore a dove grey cashmere sweater, tailored black pants, and minimal but expensive jewelry. Her blue eyes scanned the room until they found Ethan, and she moved toward him with the confident grace that had first attracted his father 12 years ago. "Ethan," she said, as he stood to greet her. She placed a light kiss on his cheek, a gesture that had always felt performative rather than affectionate. "What a surprise to get your message. I was in the middle of retirement party preparations when it came through." "Thanks for making the time," Ethan replied, waiting for her to sit before retaking his own seat. "I know you must be busy with everything." Victoria placed her designer handbag on the empty chair beside her and folded her hands on the table. "I must admit, I'm curious. We don't usually do ... this." She gestured between them, indicating their current one-on-one meeting. "No, we don't," Ethan agreed. "But I thought it might be good to talk before the retirement weekend. Just the two of us." A server approached, and Victoria ordered a pot of Darjeeling tea. When they were alone again, she fixed Ethan with a direct gaze. "You've got your father concerned, you know. He hasn't heard from you directly about the RSVP, only through Chloe. And now this mysterious meeting with me. Is that why you came? Because Dad sent you to find out what I'm up to?" A flicker of something annoyance perhaps crossed Victoria's carefully composed features. "Contrary to what you might think, Ethan, I don't actually do everything at your father's behest. I came because I was curious." The server returned with Victoria's tea, arranging the pot, cup, and accessories with practiced precision before leaving them alone once more. "So," Victoria said as she poured her tea with steady hands, "what is it you wanted to discuss?" Ethan took a sip of his coffee, buying himself a moment to organize his thoughts. "I wanted to talk about Dad, about his retirement party, about the kind of man everyone thinks he is versus the kind of man he actually is." Victoria's eyebrows rose slightly, but her expression remained neutral. "That sounds rather ominous." "It's not meant to be, it's just." Ethan hesitated, then decided to be direct. "Did you know he skipped my college graduation to attend a non-existent Cornell alumni meeting with Chloe?" If Victoria was surprised by this abrupt change in subject, she didn't show it. She added a thin slice of lemon to her tea and stirred it slowly. "I was aware that he missed your graduation. I was not aware of the reason he gave you." She looked up at Ethan. "For what it's worth, he told me he had to attend an emergency meeting with the board of directors that weekend." Now it was Ethan's turn to be surprised. "He lied to you too?" "It appears so." Victoria took a measured sip of her tea. "Though I'm not entirely shocked. Your father has always been selective with the truth when it suits him." The casual way she acknowledged this struck Ethan. "And that doesn't bother you?" Victoria set down her cup with precision. "Ethan, I've been married to your father for 12 years. I harbor no illusions about who Gregory Reed is." She studied him for a moment. "But I suspect you didn't ask me here to discuss my marriage." "No," Ethan admitted. "I asked you here because I'm trying to decide what to do about the retirement party." "What to do?" "You attend, you smile, you toast your father, and you leave. What else is there to do?" Ethan leaned forward slightly. "What if I don't want to just smile and pretend anymore? What if I want to tell the truth about how he's treated me all these years? About the promises he's broken, about the times he's chosen Chloe over me without a second thought?" Victoria's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes sharpened. "You're considering confronting your father at his retirement party?" "I'm considering being honest for once in my life." Victoria was quiet for a long moment, absently turning her teacup in its saucer. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than before. "Did you know that your father has a separate email account? One that I'm not supposed to know about?" Ethan blinked at the apparent non sequitur. "What?" "It's where he conducts certain personal business, corresponds with people I'm not meant to know about." She looked up at Ethan, her blue eyes clear and direct. "I found it 3 years ago. I've been monitoring it ever since." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying he's having an affair? A small bitter smile touched Victoria's lips. Affairs, plural. Currently, with his administrative assistant, Renee. Previously, with at least 2 other women that I know of. She took another sip of tea, her composure never wavering. I'm telling you this because you seem to think you're the only one your father has lied to. You're not. Ethan sat back, processing this information. If you know all this, why are you still with him? That's a complicated question with a complicated answer. Victoria set her cup down and folded her hands. The simple version is that I made a choice for myself and for Chloe. Gregory provides a certain lifestyle that would be difficult to maintain on my own. In return, I maintain the appearance of the perfect corporate wife. Her tone was matter-of-fact, devoid of self-pity. It's a transaction that has worked for us. But what about Chloe? Doesn't she deserve better than a father who lives a double life? Something flashed in Victoria's eyes, a protective instinct that Ethan recognized immediately. Gregory has been nothing but devoted to Chloe since the day we met. Whatever his failings as a husband, he has been an excellent father to her. The unfairness of this statement hit Ethan like a physical blow. While being a terrible one to me, Victoria had the grace to look slightly abashed. That's not what I meant to imply, but it's true, isn't it? Dad gets to be Father of the Year to Chloe while treating me like an afterthought. Ethan struggled to keep his voice level. Do you have any idea what that's been like? Growing up, watching him shower her with attention and gifts, while I got cancelled plans and empty promises. Victoria was quiet for a moment, studying him. I won't pretend to know what that's been like for you, Ethan, but I will say this. Chloe's relationship with your father isn't as perfect as you might think. What do you mean? I mean that the attention comes with strings attached. The expectations, the pressure to be perfect, to reflect well on him, ... Double quotes. Victoria shook her head slightly. It's a different kind of difficult. Ethan wanted to dismiss this, to hold on to the narrative he'd constructed over years of feeling second best, but something in Victoria's expression gave him pause. Is that why she's always been so ... cold toward me? Because she's dealing with her own issues with Dad? Victoria sighed, a small crack in her polished facade. Chloe has always felt that she needs to compete for Gregory's attention. When you're around, she feels threatened, like you're a reminder that she wasn't his first choice, his first family. She gave a small, humorless laugh. Ironic, isn't it, that you both feel like you're losing the same competition? Ethan absorbed this, trying to reconcile it with years of perceived slights and real hurts. That doesn't excuse how she's treated me. No, it doesn't, Victoria agreed. Just as nothing excuses how Gregory has treated you. Or me, for that matter. She reached for her tea again, her movements precise. Which brings us back to your original question. What are you planning to do at the retirement party? Ethan hesitated, suddenly less certain than he had been when he arrived. I don't know anymore, I thought. I thought maybe I'd finally confront him. Make him acknowledge how he's failed me as a father. He traced the rim of his coffee cup. But now I'm wondering what that would actually accomplish. Victoria studied him for a long moment. Can I offer you some advice, Ethan? Not as your stepmother, but as someone who has spent the last 12 years studying Gregory Reed. Ethan nodded. Curious, despite himself, your father cares about one thing, above all else, his image. The carefully constructed persona of the successful businessman, the family man, the pillar of the community. Victoria leaned forward slightly. If you want to hurt him, really hurt him, that's where you aim. Ethan felt a strange chill at how coldly analytical Victoria was being. Is that what you want? For me to hurt him? Victoria sat back, her expression unreadable. What I want is irrelevant. But I think you deserve the chance to be heard after all these years of being silenced. She paused, choosing her words carefully. There will be a moment during the gala when friends and family are invited to share memories and tributes. It's meant to be a celebration of Gregory's career and character. Let me guess, Chloe's already prepared a tearful speech about what an amazing father he's been. Actually, no. She's been strangely resistant to participating. Victoria's eyes met his. Perhaps you should volunteer. Ethan stared at her, understanding dawning. You're suggesting I use that moment to tell everyone the truth. I'm suggesting that if you want your father to truly hear you, you need to speak to him in a language he understands. Victoria's voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent of something harder. The question is, are you prepared for the consequences? What consequences? Once you cross this line, there's no going back. Whatever relationship you still have with your father, with Chloe, it will be irrevocably changed. She studied him. Are you ready for that? Ethan thought about his graduation day, sitting in the auditorium with an empty seat beside his mother. About the countless baseball games and school events his father had missed. About the way Gregory's eyes would light up when Chloe entered a room, while Ethan received nothing more than a distracted nod. I think that relationship has been broken for a long time, he said quietly. I've just been the only one acknowledging it. Victoria nodded slowly. Then perhaps it's time everyone else acknowledged it too. She reached into her handbag and pulled out her phone, checking the time. I should be going, I have a meeting with the event planner at 2. As she gathered her things, she paused, her expression softening slightly. For what it's worth, Ethan, I've always thought you deserved better. From Gregory, from Chloe, perhaps even from me. The admission surprised him. Why are you helping me with this? Aren't you worried about how it will affect you? Victoria stood, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her immaculate clothing. Let's just say I have my own reasons for wanting the truth to come out. She gave him a small, enigmatic smile. Besides, after 12 years of marriage, I've become quite adept at weathering Gregory Reed's storms. She placed a hand lightly on his shoulder as she passed the most genuine gesture of affection she had ever shown him. Whatever you decide to do, Ethan, make sure it's what you truly want, not just what will hurt him the most. With that, she left her departure as poised and elegant as her arrival had been. Ethan remained at the table, his coffee long since gone cold. Outside the cafe window, the November sun cast long shadows across the street. He pulled out his phone and opened his text conversation with Michelle. Ethan, just finished talking with Victoria. You won't believe what happened. Michelle, everything. Okay, what did she say? Ethan began typing, then stopped, staring at the screen. How could he possibly convey the complexity of what had just transpired? How Victoria had revealed herself to be not just aware of his father's failings, but a potential ally in exposing them. Ethan, too much to text. Can I call you Michelle? Of course. I'm on break for another 20 min. As he stepped outside to make the call, Ethan felt a strange sense of calm settling over him. For the first time in his life, he wasn't alone in seeing the real Gregory Reed. And for the first time, he was considering doing something about it. 2 weeks later, Ethan found himself in the unlikely position of waiting for Chloe Reed outside a small bistro in Asheville. After his conversation with Victoria, he had been surprised to receive a text from his stepsister asking to meet, something that had never happened in the 12 years their parents had been married. The November day was crisp and clear, the kind of perfect late autumn weather that drew tourists to the Blue Ridge Mountains. Ethan had arrived early, choosing a table on the heated outdoor patio where he could watch the colorful leaves drift down onto the sidewalk. When Chloe appeared, he almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the glossy, perfect appearance he associated with his stepsister. Instead, her long blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore minimal makeup, and her outfit, jeans, boots, and an oversized sweater, was a far cry from her usual carefully curated look. She spotted him and approached, her expression guarded. At 19, Chloe Reed was undeniably beautiful, with her mother's blue eyes and a poise that came from years of being told she was special. But today, there was something different about her, a vulnerability that Ethan had never seen before. Hey, she said awkwardly, as she slid into the seat across from him. Thanks for meeting me. No problem, Ethan replied, studying her. Up close, he could see the shadows under her eyes, poorly concealed by makeup. Though I have to admit, I was surprised to hear from you. Chloe fidgeted with the menu, not meeting his gaze. Yeah, well, Mum mentioned that you two had coffee a couple weeks ago. She did. Ethan hadn't expected Victoria to share that information with Chloe. She didn't tell me what you talked about, Chloe added quickly. Just that you'd met up, and that it made her think about ... stuff. She finally looked up at him. So, have you decided if you're coming to Dad's retirement thing? I already told you I was, Ethan reminded her. With my girlfriend? Right. Chloe bit her lower lip. And are you? I mean, is everything okay? With you and Dad? The question was so unexpected that Ethan couldn't help but laugh. Is everything okay with me and Dad? When has that ever been a concern of yours, Chloe? Her cheeks flushed. That's not fair, isn't it? In 12 years, you've never once shown any interest in my relationship with Dad. Why start now? Chloe's expression hardened, more like the stepsister he recognized. Fine, forget I asked. She started to stand. This was a mistake. Wait, Ethan said, surprising himself. I'm sorry, that was harsh. Please, sit down. After a moment's hesitation, Chloe sank back into her chair. A server approached, and they both ordered drinks, coffee for Ethan, hot chocolate for Chloe. When they were alone again, an uncomfortable silence stretched between them. So, Ethan finally said, what did you really want to talk about? Chloe stared down at the table, tracing patterns on the surface with her fingertip. Mum's leaving Dad, she said abruptly. After the retirement weekend, she's already got a lawyer and everything. Ethan felt his eyebrows rise. She's divorcing him. Chloe nodded, still not looking up. She told me last week, said she's been planning it for months. Now she did look up, her blue eyes swimming with unshed tears. Did you know? Is that what you two were talking about? No, Ethan said honestly. She didn't tell me that, though it certainly explained some things about their conversation. She says, ... Chloe's voice wavered. She says Dad's been cheating on her, that he's not the man everyone thinks he is. A tear escaped, trailing down her cheek. Is it true, do you know? The naked vulnerability in her question hit Ethan like a physical blow. For the first time, he saw Chloe not as the golden child who had usurped his place, but as a young woman whose world was crumbling beneath her feet. I don't know for sure, he said carefully. But from what Victoria told me, yes, I think it's probably true. Chloe nodded as if she'd expected this answer, wiping away the tear with an impatient gesture. That's what Mum said, that he's been living a double life for years. Her voice grew bitter. Apparently, everyone knew but me. Their drinks arrived, providing a momentary reprieve from the heavy conversation. Chloe wrapped her hands around her mug, looking smaller and younger than her 19 years. I always thought, ... double quotes, she began, then stopped, collecting herself. I always thought he was perfect, you know? The perfect dad, the perfect husband, the perfect businessman. Everyone always said how lucky I was to have Gregory Reed as my father. Ethan felt a complicated mixture of emotion, sympathy for her current pain, but also a deep-seated resentment at the years she'd spent basking in the paternal attention he'd been denied. He was different with you, he said, unable to keep the edge from his voice. With me, he was always too busy, too distracted, too ... absent. Chloe looked up, her expression surprised. What do you mean? Come on, Chloe, you know exactly what I mean. Dad has always put you first, your recitals, your games, your college interviews. Do you have any idea how many of my events he's missed? Over the years, including my college graduation, he said he had a board meeting that day, Chloe said, frowning. He never mentioned anything about an interview with me. Of course he didn't, because there was no interview. Just like there was probably no board meeting. It was just another excuse to not be there for me. Chloe was quiet for a long moment. Absorbing this, I didn't know, she finally said, her voice small. I mean, I knew you guys weren't close, but I always thought that was just, I don't know, a guy thing. Or, because you lived with your mum. Ethan stared at her incredulously. A guy thing. Chloe, he's missed birthdays, graduations, important moments throughout my entire life. That's not a guy thing, that's neglect. But he always talked about how proud he was of you, Chloe protested. About how smart you were, how you were going to be this amazing psychologist someday. Now it was Ethan's turn to be surprised. He said that. To you. All the time, Chloe nodded. Especially when I was struggling in school. He'd be like, why can't you be more like Ethan? He never needed help with his homework. Her mouth twisted. It used to drive me crazy actually. Hearing about how perfect you were. Ethan sat back, trying to reconcile this information with his own experience. He never said anything like that to me, ever. The realization settled over both of them how their father had played them against each other, praising each to the other while treating them entirely differently in person. So he lied to both of us, Chloe said quietly. Just in different ways. Ethan nodded slowly. It seems that way. They sat in silence for a moment, each processing this new understanding. Outside, the wind had picked up, sending a flurry of red and gold leaves dancing across the sidewalk. What are you going to do? Chloe finally asked. At the retirement party, I mean. Mum thinks you're planning something. Ethan considered his answer carefully. I'm still figuring that out. But I'm tired of pretending, Chloe. Tired of smiling and acting like everything's fine when it's not. To his surprise, Chloe nodded. Yeah, I get that now. She hesitated, then asked, What if I helped me? How? I don't know, exactly. But I know things about Dad, things he wouldn't want people to know. And after what Mum told me, ... She squared her shoulders, suddenly looking more like the confident Chloe he knew. Maybe it's time people saw the real Gregory Reed. Ethan studied her, trying to determine if she was serious. Why would you do that? Turn against your dad? Chloe's expression hardened. Because I'm tired of being used as his prop. His perfect little accessory that he parades around. When it suits him, and ignores when it doesn't. She leaned forward. And because I'm starting to realize that while he was busy making me hate you, he was the one who deserved it all along. The raw honesty in her voice was startling. For the first time in their 12 years as siblings, Ethan felt a genuine connection with Chloe, shared understanding born from similar wounds inflicted by the same man. So, Chloe said, holding his gaze steadily, are we doing this? Together. Ethan took a deep breath, considering the implications. Working with Chloe would certainly make his plan more powerful, more devastating to his father's carefully constructed image, but it would also mean trusting someone who had been, until very recently, firmly in his father's corner. Let me think about it, he said finally. This isn't just about getting back at Dad, it's about finally being honest with him, with everyone, including ourselves. Chloe nodded, understanding. Fair enough. But just so you know, she pulled out her phone and showed him a folder of screenshots, text messages, emails, photos. I've got receipts. Lots of them. As Ethan scanned through the evidence of his father's deceptions, a plan began to form in his mind, one that would require not just courage, but perfect timing. And perhaps, unexpectedly, the help of the stepsister he'd resented for so long. One more thing, Chloe said, as they prepared to leave. Michelle, your girlfriend. Mum says she's good for you. Ethan smiled, thinking of Michelle's unwavering support. She is the best thing in my life, actually. Good, Chloe said, with surprising sincerity. You deserve that. Someone who's actually there for you. The subtext was clear, unlike their father, as they parted ways on the sidewalk. Chloe surprised him again by giving him an awkward hug. I'm sorry, she whispered, for everything. Watching her walk away, Ethan felt the ground shifting beneath him once more. In a matter of weeks, his understanding of his family had been completely upended. Victoria was leaving Gregory. Chloe was questioning everything she thought she knew about her father, and Ethan himself was no longer alone in his grievances. The retirement weekend was less than a month away. Whatever he decided to do, he now had something he'd never expected: dollars within his father's own house. Chapter 4, The Reckoning. Asheville, North Carolina, December 2023. The Grand Bohemian Hotel glittered like a jewel in the heart of downtown Asheville. Its Tudor-inspired architecture, illuminated by thousands of tiny white lights for the holiday season. Snow had fallen earlier in the day, a rare December occurrence that had transformed the mountain city into a winter wonderland. As Ethan and Michelle pulled up to the valet stand, he couldn't help but appreciate the theatrical setting for what was about to unfold. "Are you sure about this?" Michelle asked quietly, her hand finding his across the center console. She looked stunning in a deep green velvet dress that complemented her dark hair and eyes, but her expression was concerned. "We can still change the plan. Just attend, be polite, and leave early." Ethan squeezed her hand, drawing strength from her steady presence. "I'm sure. It's time." They exited the car, surrendering the keys to the valet, and making their way into the opulent lobby. The retirement gala was being held in the hotel's grand ballroom, and even from the entrance, Ethan could hear the murmur of voices, the clink of glasses, and the subtle strains of a string quartet. "Ethan, Michelle." The voice came from behind them, and they turned to see Marcus approaching, looking uncharacteristically formal in a tailored suit. Beside him walked Zoe, elegant in a silver cocktail dress. "You guys made it," Ethan said, genuinely pleased to see his friends. Having them here tonight felt right. These people who had become his chosen family over the years. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," Marcus replied, clapping Ethan on the shoulder. His eyes held a question. "Still going through with Operation Truth Bomb?" Ethan nodded, his resolve strengthening. "More than ever." "Well, we've got your back," Zoe assured him, her Australian accent more pronounced when she was nervous. "Whatever happens in there, we're with you." The four of them made their way toward the ballroom, pausing at the entrance, where a photographer was capturing arrivals against a backdrop emblazoned with Gregory Reed, 35 years of excellence, in gold lettering. "Mr. Reed's son?" the photographer asked, gesturing for Ethan and Michelle to pose. "That's right," Ethan confirmed, putting his arm around Michelle's waist as they smiled for the camera. "Your father's been asking about you," the photographer commented as he snapped several photos. "Said to send you straight to the family table when you arrived." "We'll find our way there," Ethan assured him. Leading Michelle into the ballroom, the space was transformed. Draped in whites and golds with elaborate floral centerpieces on every table. At the front of the room, a stage had been set up with a podium and a large screen currently displaying a slideshow of Gregory Reed's career highlights. Ethan scanned the crowd, recognizing many of his father's colleagues and friends, most of whom he hadn't seen in years. "There's Victoria," Michelle murmured, nodding toward a corner where his stepmother stood in conversation with two older men. In expensive suits, she wore a striking midnight blue gown and an expression of perfect composure. Though Ethan now knew what turmoil must lie beneath that carefully maintained facade. Victoria caught his eye across the room and gave him a slight note acknowledgement of their shared understanding. Beside her, Ethan spotted Chloe, looking unusually subdued in a simple black dress. Her blonde hair swept up in an elegant twist. Their conversation 2 weeks ago had clearly left its mark. "There he is, my boy." The booming voice cut through the ambient noise of the room, and Ethan turned to see his father approaching with open arms. Gregory Reed was the picture of distinguished success in his custom tuxedo. His silver hair perfectly styled, his smile broad and camera-ready. At 56 he remained handsome and fit, projecting an air of vitality and confidence that had served him well throughout his career. "Dad," Ethan said, accepting the embrace that felt as hollow as it always had. "Congratulations on your retirement." "Thank you, son. I'm so glad you could make it." Gregory turned his attention to Michelle, taking her hand with practiced charm. "And Michelle, lovely as ever. Thank you for coming, my dear." "I wouldn't have missed it, Mr. Reed," Michelle replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Gregory, please," he insisted, as he always did. "We're family here." He gestured to Marcus and Zoe. "And you brought friends." "Wonderful." After brief introductions, Gregory placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, steering him slightly away from the group. I've been wanting to talk to you, son. It's been too long since my graduation. In fact, Ethan couldn't help but point out a flicker of discomfort crossed Gregory's face before his smile reasserted itself. Yes. Well, that's actually what I wanted to discuss. I know I've been ... distant lately. Work has been demanding, with the transition to retirement and all. He lowered his voice, adopting a confidential tone. But that's all changing now. I'll have real time to focus on what matters. On family. The practiced sincerity in his father's voice made something twist painfully in Ethan's chest. How many times had he heard variations of this promise over the years? How many times had he wanted desperately to believe it? That sounds great, Dad, he said neutrally. I'm looking forward to hearing more about these plans during your speech. Gregory's face brightened. About that Victoria mentioned, you might be interested in saying a few words tonight. During the tributes, Ethan felt a surge of anticipation. The plan was working. If there's time, I'd be honored. Wonderful. I've added you to the program. You'll be right after Chloe. Gregory squeezed his shoulder. It means a lot to me, son. Having both my children speak tonight. Before Ethan could respond, they were interrupted by the event coordinator announcing that dinner would be served shortly and requesting that everyone find their tables. We'll catch up more later, Gregory promised, already turning to greet another group of arriving guests. Your table is right up front, table 1, can't miss it. As his father moved away, Michelle rejoined Ethan, slipping her arm through his. Everything okay? It's all going according to plan, Ethan confirmed. I'm on the program for the tributes. Right after Chloe. Michelle studied his face. And how are you feeling about that now? Now that we're here, Ethan glanced around the room at the people who had gathered to celebrate his father, at the lavish display that spoke to Gregory Reed's need for validation and admiration. Then he looked back at Michelle, whose steady presence had become his touchstone. I'm ready, he said simply. Dinner passed in a blur of fine food and forced conversation. Ethan was seated at the family table with Gregory, Victoria, Chloe, and several of his father's closest colleagues and their spouses. Michelle sat beside him, while Marcus and Zoe had been placed at a nearby table with other younger guests. Throughout the meal, Ethan observed the dynamics at play. Gregory held court, charming everyone with anecdotes from his career. Victoria maintained her role as the perfect corporate wife, laughing at the right moments and keeping the conversation flowing smoothly. But Ethan now noticed the careful distance she maintained from her husband, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes. Chloe, meanwhile, was uncharacteristically quiet. She picked at her food and responded only briefly when addressed directly. Twice, Ethan caught her watching him with an unreadable expression. As dessert was being served, Ethan's phone vibrated with a text. He checked it discreetly under the table. Chloe, still going through with it? Ethan glanced up to find his stepsister watching him from across the table. He gave a subtle nod, and she responded with one of her own. Chloe, I'll set it up perfectly for you. Don't worry. Another text quickly followed. Chloe, for what it's worth, I'm sorry it had to be this way, but he deserves it. Before Ethan could respond, the event coordinator approached the podium, signaling the start of the evening's program. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention please. Welcome to this special evening honoring the remarkable career of Gregory Reed. The formal portion of the event began with a video tribute featuring colleagues and industry leaders praising Gregory's contributions to the financial sector. This was followed by speeches from his company's CEO, a local political figure, and several longtime business associates. Each spoke of Gregory's vision, his integrity, his commitment to excellence, painting a picture of a man Ethan barely recognized. Throughout it all, Gregory sat at the center of the head table, accepting the praise with practiced humility. Occasionally, he would reach for Victoria's hand or nod appreciatively at particularly effusive compliments. To anyone watching, he appeared to be exactly what these tributes claimed: a consummate professional, a devoted family man, a pillar of the community. Only those who knew the truth, Victoria, and now Chloe could see the performance for what it was. Finally, the event coordinator returned to the podium. And now, we have some special tributes from those who know Gregory best, his family. First, we'll hear from his daughter, Chloe Reed. A polite round of applause followed as Chloe rose from her seat and made her way to the podium. She appeared composed, though Ethan noticed a slight tremor in her hands as she placed her notes on the lectern. "Good evening," she began, her voice clear in the hushed room. "For those who don't know me, I'm Chloe Reed, Gregory's daughter." She paused, her eyes finding her father in the audience. "I've been asked to share some personal memories tonight, to give you all a glimpse of the man behind the success." Gregory beamed at her, his expression radiating paternal pride. "My earliest memory of my father, or rather, my stepfather, is from when I was 7 years old," Chloe continued. "He had just started dating my mother, and he took us to the state fair. I remember being afraid to ride the Ferris wheel, but he promised he wouldn't let anything bad happen to me." Her voice softened. "He said, 'I'll always keep you safe, Chloe. That's what fathers do.'" Murmurs of appreciation rippled through the audience. Gregory's smile widened. "And for the most part, he kept that promise," Chloe went on. "He was there for my dance recitals, my school plays, my cheerleading competitions. He helped me with science projects and drove me to sleepovers. When I struggled with math in high school, he hired the best tutors. When I wanted to attend summer programs at prestigious universities, he made it happen." She paused, her expression shifting subtly. "He made sure I had everything I could ever want. Everything, except the one thing I needed most, the truth." A confused murmur ran through the crowd. Gregory's smile faltered slightly. The truth that while he was building this perfect life for us, this showcase family that looked so good in Christmas card photos, he was simultaneously destroying his relationship with his son. "My stepbrother, Ethan." Ethan felt his heart rate accelerate as all eyes in the room briefly turned to him. This wasn't part of the plan they had discussed. Chloe was going off script. "The truth that while he was attending my dance recitals, he was missing Ethan's baseball games. While he was helping me with science projects, he was canceling plans with his son. While he was preparing me for Cornell interviews that didn't even exist yet, he was skipping Ethan's college graduation." Gregory's face had drained of color. Victoria sat perfectly still beside him, her expression unreadable. "I used to think I was special," Chloe continued, her voice gaining strength. "That Dad chose to be present for me because I deserved it more somehow. It took me until very recently to realize that I wasn't special, at Ali, was just useful. A prop in his performance as Father of the Year." She looked directly at Gregory now, tears shimmering in her eyes. "But the thing about props is that, eventually, they see how they're being used. They start to notice the cracks in the performance." Chloe took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "Like the crack I noticed when I found emails between you and your administrative assistant, Renee, planning your romantic getaway to Bermuda scheduled for the same weekend as Mum's cancer screening last year." Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Gregory half rose from his seat, his expression thunderous. But Victoria placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Or the crack I noticed when I overheard you on the phone with your investment partner, discussing how you'd massaged the numbers on that development project in Charlotte, the one that displaced an entire neighborhood of low-income families." The room had gone completely silent now, every eye fixed on Chloe as she systematically dismantled the image Gregory Reed had spent decades cultivating. "But the biggest crack of all, that was watching you lie, over and over again, to the people who loved you most. To Mum, to Ethan, to me." Chloe's voice broke slightly. "Do you know how it feels to realize that your whole life has been built on performances and lies? That the man you idolized, the man you defended, even when it meant hurting others, was never who he claimed to be?" She paused, collecting herself. "I'm not up here to air dirty laundry for the sake of drama. I'm here because someone in this family needs to finally tell the truth. And since you never could, Dad, I guess it has to be me." Chloe gathered her notes with trembling hands. "Congratulations on your retirement. I hope it gives you time to reflect on the legacy you're really leaving behind, the one in those tribute videos, but the real one. The broken relationships. The betrayed trust. The people you've hurt while building your perfect image. With that, she stepped away from the podium and walked directly out of the ballroom, leaving stunned silence in her wake. After several excruciating seconds, the event coordinator hurried to the podium, clearly flustered. Thank you, Ms. Reed, for that personal reflection. Next, we'll hear from Gregory's son, Ethan Reed. All eyes turned to Ethan as he slowly rose from his seat. Michelle squeezed his hand in silent support before releasing it. As he made his way to the podium, Ethan could feel the weight of hundreds of stares, some curious, some uncomfortable, some openly hostile. Gregory's face was a mask of barely controlled fury, his knuckles white where he gripped the edge of the table. Victoria sat beside him, her posture rigid but her expression almost relieved, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Ethan reached the podium and placed his hands on either side, steadying himself. The speech he had prepared, the careful, measured unveiling of his father's neglect that he had rehearsed for weeks, now seemed inadequate in the wake of Chloe's raw honesty. He looked out at the sea of faces, at the people who had gathered to celebrate a man they thought they knew. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the worn leather journal he had carried with him since childhood. I had a whole speech prepared, Ethan began, his voice quiet but steady in the hushed room. Pages of carefully chosen words, about my father's legacy. But after what you just heard from my sister and, yes, despite everything, that's what Chloe is to me. Think what's needed now is something simpler, something more honest. He opened the journal to a page he had marked. When I was 12 years old, my mother gave me this journal to help me process my feelings about my parents' divorce. I wrote in it almost every day for 2 years. He looked directly at his father. I'd like to read you one entry, if that's okay, Dad. Gregory didn't respond, his jaw clenched tight. Ethan began to read, his voice clear in the silent room. May 7, 2011. Dad cancelled our weekend again. Said he had an important meeting that couldn't wait. But I saw on Facebook that he took Chloe to Six Flags instead. Mum says I shouldn't be upset, that he's just trying to bond with his new family. But what about me? Aren't I still his family too? Sometimes I think he forgot about me when he left. Like I was just another thing he didn't want to take with him. He turned the page. July 15, 2011. My baseball team made the championship today. I pitched the whole game, and we won 3-2. Coach said it was the best he's seen me play. I called Dad right after to tell him, but he didn't pick up. Left a message, but he hasn't called back yet. Chloe had a dance recital yesterday, and he posted 15 pictures of it online, saying how proud he was. I just want him to be proud of me too. Ethan closed the journal, looking up at the crowd. I could read dozens more entries just like these. Little moments that might seem insignificant individually, but together, they tell the story of a child slowly realizing he wasn't a priority in his father's life anymore. He turned his attention directly to Gregory. I'm not here to vilify you, Dad. I'm not even here to make you feel guilty, though I think you should. I'm here because for most of my life, I've been trying to understand why I wasn't enough for you. Why Chloe got the father I always wanted. Why you could make time for her, but not for me. Gregory shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but remained silent. For years, I blamed myself, Ethan continued. I thought maybe if I was smarter, or more athletic, or more outgoing, more like Chloe, then you'd want to be around me too. It took me a long time to realize that the problem was never with me, it was with you. With your inability to balance your old family with your new one. With your need to compartmentalize your life into neat, separate boxes that never intersected. Ethan placed the journal back in his pocket. When I was getting my psychology degree, the graduation ceremony you missed. By the way, learned about something called compartmentalization. It's a defense mechanism, where people mentally separate conflicting aspects of their lives to avoid the discomfort of contradiction. Sound familiar, Dad? Gregory stared at him, his expression a mixture of anger and something else, something that might have been shame. You created separate compartments for every part of your life, Ethan continued. Work Gregory, who was ambitious and driven. Husband Gregory, who was charming and attentive at least in public. Father to Chloe Gregory, who never missed a recital or a game. And then there was father to Ethan Gregory, the compartment you accessed least often, usually when it was convenient or when social expectations demanded it. Ethan paused, looking around the room at the uncomfortable faces of his father's colleagues and friends. I'm not telling you all this to ruin my father's retirement party. I'm telling you because for once in my life, I want to be seen. I want my father to look at me and acknowledge the pain his choices have caused. He turned back to Gregory. I came here tonight not out of obligation, not to cause a scene, but because despite everything, I still had this small, stubborn hope that maybe, just maybe, you'd finally recognize what you've done. That you'd apologize. Not with empty promises about how things will be different now that you're retired, but with genuine remorse for the years we've lost. The ballroom remained deathly quiet, hundreds of witnesses to this family's unraveling. You know what's ironic, Dad? The more I've learned about your life, your real life, not the carefully curated version you present to the world, the more I realize that I might be the lucky one after all. Because while you were busy building your perfect image with Chloe, I was building something real. I found people who show up for me consistently, my mum, my friends, my girlfriend, people who don't see me as an inconvenience or an afterthought, but as someone worth prioritizing. Ethan straightened his shoulders, feeling a weight lifting as he spoke truths that had been buried for too long. So congratulations on your retirement. I truly hope you use this time to reflect on the choices you've made and the people you've hurt along the way. Because the legacy you're leaving isn't just about business success or community recognition. It's also about the son who spent his childhood waiting for a father who never fully showed up. He stepped away from the podium, prepared to walk back to his seat, when Gregory suddenly rose to his feet. Ethan, wait. His father's voice was strained, lacking its usual confidence. Can I say something? Ethan hesitated, then nodded, stepping to the side of the podium as Gregory approached. The room seemed to hold its collective breath. Gregory stood before the microphone, looking out at the audience before turning to face his son. For perhaps the first time in Ethan's memory, his father appeared genuinely unsure of himself. I don't know what to say, Gregory began, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. Except that, you're right, you and Chloe both. He swallowed hard. I've spent my entire adult life cultivating an image of success, of perfection. I convinced myself that as long as I provided financially, as long as I checked certain boxes, I was doing my job as a father. He looked directly at Ethan, really looked at him, in a way that made Ethan feel truly seen for perhaps the first time. But I wasn't, was I? Not for you. And maybe not for Chloe either, in the ways that truly mattered. Gregory gripped the edges of the podium, his knuckles white. I told myself I was building a legacy, something important, something that would last. But what good is a legacy if it's built on neglect and deception? What good is success if it comes at the expense of the people who should matter most? He turned back to the audience, many of whom were shifting uncomfortably in their seats. I stand before you tonight not as the man those tribute videos portrayed, but as someone who has made profound mistakes, who has failed in ways that no business success can compensate for. Gregory's voice broke slightly. I failed my son. I prioritized my new family over him, convinced myself it was inevitable, that it was just how things worked after divorce. I missed his games, his graduation, his life milestones, not because I had to, but because I chose to. Because it was easier to build something new than to maintain something that required effort and acknowledgement of my own failings. He turned back to Ethan. I can't undo the past. I can't give you back those baseball games or your graduation day. But I can stand here now, in front of everyone who thinks they know me, and tell the truth. I was wrong. I failed you as a father, and I am so sorry. The sincerity in his father's voice caught Ethan off guard. This wasn't the practiced charm or the smooth deflection he was accustomed to. This was something he had never heard from Gregory Reed before. Raw, unfiltered honesty. "I don't expect forgiveness," Gregory continued. "I haven't earned it. But I want you to know that I see you now, Ethan. I see the remarkable man you've become, not because of me, but despite me, and I am prouder of you than you will ever know." He stepped away from the podium then, moving to stand directly in front of Ethan. "I know it's too little, too late. But if you're willing, I'd like the chance to try to be the father you deserved. All along, not with grand gestures or empty promises, but with consistent presence, with effort, with truth." For a moment, Ethan couldn't speak, overwhelmed by emotions he hadn't anticipated. He had come here tonight expecting confrontation, possibly denial, maybe even anger. He hadn't prepared for genuine remorse. "I don't know if that's possible," he finally said, his voice low enough that only his father could hear. "There's a lot of hurt between us." "I know," Gregory nodded. "And that's on me. But I'd like to try, if you'll let me. No more compartments. Just ... trying to be better, to be real." Before Ethan could respond, there was movement at the ballroom entrance. Chloe had returned, her face tear-streaked but composed. She walked slowly toward them, stopping a few feet away. "I heard what you said, Dad," she said quietly. "Did you mean it? About being real? About no more compartments?" Gregory turned to face his daughter, nodding slowly. "I meant it, all of it." "Then there's something else everyone here should know," Chloe said, her voice strengthening. "Mum's leaving you. After this weekend, she knows about the affairs, about everything." She glanced at Victoria, who sat watching the scene unfold with a strange mix of sadness and relief on her face. She deserved better too. Gregory closed his eyes briefly, absorbing this public confirmation of his marriage's end. When he opened them again, there was resignation in his expression, but also, surprisingly, something like acceptance. "She did," he agreed simply. "You all did." The event coordinator hovered awkwardly nearby, clearly uncertain how to proceed with the scheduled program after such unexpected revelations. The audience remained in stunned silence. Witnesses to the unraveling of Gregory Reed's carefully constructed life, Ethan felt Michelle appear at his side, her hand finding his and squeezing gently. On his other side, Chloe stood, no longer the adversary he had perceived her to be for so many years, but another child who had been shaped by Gregory Reed's flawed parenting. "What happens now?" Chloe asked, the question directed at both her father and stepbrother. Gregory looked between his children. The facade of the perfect father finally, completely gone. In its place was just a man-flawed human, real. "I don't know," he admitted. "But whatever it is, I want to face it honestly. No more performances. No more separate compartments." He hesitated, then added, "If you'll both give me that chance." Ethan exchanged a glance with Chloe, seeing in her eyes the same cautious hope he felt stirring in his own chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet, that would take time and consistent effort on Gregory's part. But perhaps the beginning of something authentic, something real. "One day at a time," Ethan said finally, offering not a promise of reconciliation, but an opening. A possibility as the three of them stood there, surrounded by the trappings of a celebration that had transformed into something entirely different. Ethan realized that this momentary, uncomfortable, honest, was perhaps the first truly genuine interaction he had ever had with his father. It wasn't the resolution he had imagined when he'd planned his confrontation. It wasn't neat or satisfying in the way he had hoped. But as he stood between Michelle and Chloe, facing the father who had finally, truly seen him, Ethan felt something he hadn't expected to feel tonight. Hope, not for an instant transformation, or a Hollywood reconciliation, but for the slow, difficult work of building something real from the ruins of what had been false. For the possibility that Gregory Reed might finally be ready to step out of his compartments and into an authentic life. With all the messinnesses and accountability that entailed, it wasn't an ending, it was barely even a beginning. But for the first time in as long as Ethan could remember, it felt like the truth. And maybe, just maybe, That was enough for now. Chapter 5. New Beginnings. Asheville, North Carolina, May 2024. Spring had returned to the Blue Ridge Mountains, painting the landscape in vibrant greens and the delicate pinks and whites of dogwood blossoms. Ethan stood on the deck of his mother's house, coffee mug in hand, watching the morning mist rise from the valley below. The air was fresh with possibility, carrying the scent of new growth and rain-washed earth. "Beautiful morning," Michelle said, joining him at the railing. She wore one of his old university sweatshirts, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. In the 6 months since Gregory's retirement party, she had completed her medical residency and accepted a position at Asheville Memorial Hospital. Last month, she had moved into Ethan's apartment, filling the space with her books, her plants, her quiet strength. "Perfect day for a graduation," Ethan agreed, slipping an arm around her waist. Today marked the completion of his master's program in clinical psychology. Another milestone, another ceremony. But unlike his undergraduate graduation a year earlier, this one felt different. The anger and disappointment that had shadowed that day were absent now, replaced by a quiet pride in his own accomplishments and the knowledge that he was surrounded by people who truly saw him. "Your mum's already ironing her dress," Michelle said with a smile. "She's so proud of you, Ethan." "I know," he nodded, grateful once again for Diane Reed's unwavering support throughout his life. She's always been there, never missed a single important moment. The unspoken comparison hung in the air between them. Michelle knew without asking who was on his mind. "Have you heard from him?" she asked gently. Ethan nodded, setting his coffee mug on the railing. "He called yesterday. Said he's driving up from Charlotte this morning." "And how do you feel about that?" It was a question Ethan had been asking himself for months. How did he feel about Gregory Reed's tentative attempts to rebuild their relationship? About the weekly phone calls that had started awkwardly, but gradually grown more comfortable? About the weekend visits, just the two of them at first? Later, sometimes including Chloe, where they had begun the slow, difficult work of getting to know each other as they truly were, not as they had pretended to be. "I'm cautiously optimistic," Ethan said finally. "He's been consistent, which is ... new. And he's trying, I can tell." He turned to face Michelle. "But I'm also not pinning everything on his approval anymore. Whether he shows up today or not, I know what I've accomplished. I know my worth isn't tied to his recognition." Michelle's dark eyes softened with pride. "That's growth, Dr. Reed." Ethan smiled at the title he would officially receive later that day. "Not quite doctor yet, still have the PhD ahead of me." "You'll get there," she said confidently, rising on her toes to kiss him. "And I'll be right beside you every step of the way." The sound of a car door closing drew their attention. Through the trees, they could see a vehicle in the driveway. Gregory's usual luxury sedan, but a more modest SUV. Moments later, Chloe emerged from the passenger side, followed by their father from the driver's seat. "They're early," Ethan noted, surprised. Punctuality had never been Gregory's strong suit, especially for events centered around his son. As if reading his thoughts, Michelle squeezed his hand. Another good sign. They made their way down to the front yard, where Diane had already stepped out to greet the visitors. The relationship between Ethan's parents remained cordial but distant, bound by their shared history and their son, but little else. Still, Diane managed a genuine smile as she welcomed Gregory and Chloe. "You made good time from Charlotte," she observed. "We left at dawn," Gregory explained. He looked different, somehow less polished, more human. The designer suits had given way to casual wear, and he had allowed some gray to remain in his hair, rather than covering it with perfect dye. The changes were subtle but significant, signs of a man less concerned with maintaining appearances. "Ethan," Chloe called, spotting him. She hurried over, enveloping him in a hug that would have been unimaginable a year ago. At 20, she too had changed her former perfect facade, replaced by a more authentic version of herself. She had transferred from her elite private university to a state school where she was studying education. A choice that had initially shocked Gregory, but which he had ultimately supported. Ready for the big day? She asked, stepping back to examine him. Second graduation in a year of asterisk, Ethan laughed, no longer hearing criticism in her teasing, just trying to collect as many tassels as possible. Gregory approached more slowly, a wrapped package tucked under his arm. "Morning, son," he said, extending his hand. "Congratulations." Ethan shook his father's hand, then, after a brief hesitation, pulled him into a quick embrace. It wasn't the easy, natural affection he shared with his mother or Michelle, but it was real and honest acknowledgement of their complicated relationship and the work they were both doing to heal it. "Thanks for coming, Dad," Ethan said as they separated. "It means a lot." "I wouldn't miss it," Gregory replied, his voice gruff with emotion. "Not again." He held out the package. "This is for you. I wanted to give it to you privately, before the ceremony." Curious, Ethan unwrapped the gift to find a handsome leather-bound journal, similar to the one his mother had given him as a child, but of much finer quality. Inside the front cover, Gregory had written a message in his neat, precise handwriting. "Ethan, some stories need to be written down to be fully understood. I've been writing mine for the past 6 months, trying to make sense of the choices I've made and the person I want to become. This journal is for you to continue writing yours, with the hope that our stories might someday find a way to complement each other rather than clash." With pride and love, Dad Tathan ran his fingers over the inscription, feeling the weight of the words. "Thank you," he said simply. "This is really thoughtful." The retirement party. A lot of therapy too. He smiled ruefully. "Turns out, having your entire life fall apart in public is a pretty strong motivator for self-reflection. How are you doing with all that?" Ethan asked, genuinely curious. In their cautious rebuilding, they had mostly focused on the present, rarely discussing the seismic events of that December night. Gregory considered the question. Some days are harder than others. The divorce was finalized last month, so that chapter is officially closed. He glanced toward the house, where Diane and Michelle were showing Chloe inside. "Victoria's doing well, from what I hear. She's opened an art gallery in Charlotte, something she always wanted to do but I never supported properly. And what about you? The retirement going okay?" "It's been, educational," Gregory admitted. "Turns out, I didn't have many real friends, just business associates, who drifted away once I wasn't useful to them anymore." He shrugged. "But I've been volunteering at a financial literacy program for low-income families, using what I know to actually help people for a change. It's more fulfilling than I expected." Ethan nodded, noting the changes in his father, the humility that had replaced his former arrogance, the thoughtfulness that had supplanted calculation. They were still finding their way toward a new relationship, one built on honesty rather than performance, but moments like this gave him hope that it was possible. "We should head inside," he suggested. "Mum's probably got breakfast ready, and I need to get dressed for the ceremony soon." As they walked toward the house, Gregory asked, "So, what's next for you after today?" "Still planning on the PhD program in the fall." "That's the plan," Ethan confirmed. "I've been accepted at UNC Chapel Hill. It's a 3-year program, so it's a commitment, but they're doing some fascinating research on trauma recovery that aligns perfectly with what I want to focus on." "That's impressive, son," Gregory said with genuine pride. "And Michelle, will she be joining you in Chapel Hill?" "We're still figuring that out. She's just started at Asheville Memorial, so we might do the long-distance thing for a while." Ethan hesitated, then decided to share the news. "Actually, I've been thinking about asking her to marry me." Gregory stopped walking, turning to face his son with surprise and delight. "Really? That's wonderful, Ethan. She's an extraordinary woman." "She is," Ethan agreed, feeling a rush of warmth at the thought of Michelle. "She's been my rock through everything, especially this past year." "Have you looked at rings yet?" Gregory asked, resuming their walk toward the house. "Not yet. I want to find something special, something that really suits her." Gregory nodded thoughtfully. "Your grandmother's sapphire ring might be perfect. It's been in a safe deposit box." Since she passed, I always thought, he trailed off, seemingly catching himself. Well, I'd like you to have it, if you want it. For Michelle. The offer surprised Ethan. His paternal grandmother's ring was a family heirloom, something he had assumed would go to Chloe eventually. The fact that Gregory was offering it to him felt significant, an acknowledgement of his place in the family. A gesture of inclusion rather than the exclusion he had felt for so long. I'd like to see it, he said carefully. If Michelle likes it, that would mean a lot. They had reached the front porch, where the scent of coffee and breakfast wafted through the open door. Inside, they could hear female voices, Diane, Michelle, and Chloe laughing about something. Before we go in, Gregory said, placing a hand on Ethan's arm, I just want to say again how proud I am of you. Not just for your academic achievements, though those are impressive, but for the man you've become. Your compassion, your integrity, your willingness to speak your truth even when it's difficult. He swallowed hard. Those are qualities I'm still working to develop, and I'm grateful for your example. The sincerity in his father's voice touched Ethan deeply. This wasn't the calculated charm of the old Gregory Reed, but something new, and genuine, a father truly seeing his son, perhaps for the first time. Thank you, Ethan said quietly. That means a lot coming from you. Gregory nodded, emotion making further speech difficult. They stood together for a moment in comfortable silence, both aware of how far they had come and how far they still had to go. Finally, Ethan smiled and gestured toward the door. Come on, let's not keep everyone waiting. Inside the house was warm with morning light and conversation. Diane had prepared a breakfast spread that covered the dining table, fresh fruit, pastries, a vegetable frittata that was one of Ethan's favorites. Michelle was helping set out plates, while Chloe arranged flowers in a vase, blue hydrangeas that matched Ethan's graduation regalia. There they are, Diane said as they entered. We were about to send a search party, just having a father-son moment, Gregory explained. Moving to help with the table setting, Ethan caught Michelle's questioning glance and gave her a reassuring nod and smile. Later, he would tell her about their conversation, about the ring, about the growing hope he felt for his relationship with his father. For now, he simply enjoyed the moment. This gathering of people who, in various ways and to different degrees, formed the fabric of his life. As they settled around the table, Ethan found himself studying the faces around him. His mother, whose unwavering support had been his foundation. Michelle, whose love had given him strength and perspective. Chloe, once a rival, but now a potential ally and friend. And Gregory, the father who had failed him in so many ways, but who was now, finally, making a genuine effort to be present. It wasn't perfect. There were still awkward moments, still wounds that were healing, still truths that needed to be spoken. But it was real, messy, complicated, authentic. No more performances, no more separate compartments. Just people trying their best to connect, to understand, to forgive. A toast, Gregory suggested, raising his orange juice. To Ethan, on his graduation day, and to new beginnings for all of us. To new beginnings, they echoed, glasses clinking. Around the table as the conversation flowed around him, Ethan felt a deep sense of peace settle over him. The journey that had begun with pain and rejection had led him here to this moment of genuine connection. To this newfound understanding of himself and his worth. To this family that was being slowly, carefully rebuilt on a foundation of truth. Rather than appearances, his father had skipped his undergraduate graduation for his stepsister. But Ethan hadn't skipped his father's retirement. That decision, difficult as it had been, had opened the door to healing he hadn't thought possible. Sometimes, Ethan reflected, the bravest thing you could do wasn't walking away from those who had hurt you, but staying to speak your truth and give them the chance to hear it. Not everyone would take that chance. Not every relationship could or should be saved, but in this case, at least, the risk had been worth it. Later that day, as he crossed the stage to receive his master's degree, Ethan glanced toward the audience. There, in the third row, sat his family, all of them, together, watching with pride. As he reached this milestone, his mother was beaming, Michelle was discreetly wiping away tears, Chloe was taking photos, and his father was simply present. Fully, completely there. It wasn't the end of their story. In many ways, it was just the beginning. But as Ethan accepted his diploma and moved the tassel on his cap from right to left, he knew with certainty that whatever chapters came next, they would be written with honesty, with courage, and with the knowledge that he was finally truly seen. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey through Ethan's story of family, forgiveness, and finding his voice. If you connected with this narrative of complicated family dynamics and the courage it takes to speak your truth, please subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories that explore the depth of human relationships and the path to healing. Our next series will follow a mother and daughter navigating the aftermath of a long-held family secret. You won't want to miss the raw emotion and powerful moments of reconciliation. Subscribe now and be part of our storytelling community, where we share the real, messy, beautiful truth of what it means to be family.